Everyone, welcome to this last meeting of March of the Minnehaha County Commission. We'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, with liberty and
justice for all.
All right, so meetings are available for review down next to meeting documents are available for review next to Commissioner Heiberger. Just a reminder to silence your cell phones. And Craig is here this morning if you need a listening device. So as will probably be our custom for maybe the next month, we'll start with a COVID update, and I would invite Jason Gierman, Director of Emergency Management. Good morning.
Hi, Jason Gierman, Minnehaha County Emergency Management. Just give you a quick update on kind of what's happening in the Emergency Operations Center and with the healthcare systems. What we're doing is there's a group that's working with the healthcare systems to find that modeling to see where we're going to be at in a week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks. So they're working diligently on that. There's been some issues with notification to law enforcement of positive cases, and we've got a group that's working with the Department of Health on that to try and get a cleaner avenue to notify police, fire, EMS if someone's positive or negative. And the continuing problem is generally within the high-risk community, the transient population right now. Police are dealing with them, and there's obviously they're aware of the situation, and people may say that they have the virus and they have to be treated as such. So if we can get this ironed out with the state, it'll be much safer and efficient for the police, fire, and EMS. We don't have the statistics yet for today, but obviously over the weekend, cases continue to rise, and we expect it to continue to rise. The hospitals are, when I left the Emergency Operations Center, the Hospital Coalition was meeting with the warden, the sheriff, and the warden at the pen via teleconference on what this might look like in the future as far as the inmate population. Other than that, I don't have a lot. It was kind of a quiet weekend for once in the last few weeks. But if you have any questions for me, I can certainly try to answer them.
Any questions for Jason? I just would say I really appreciate you've been sending the commissioners and other leaders in Minnehaha County a daily update of the information that you've been learning at the EEOC as you spend your day there. And that's been very helpful to be able to get a snapshot of the latest developments so that we can make appropriate decisions based on what's going on here. So thank you.
Just one more thing. We've been out obviously the sheriff's office has been out spot checking businesses, and there's still a couple people out there, a couple businesses that are causing some problems. So we hope that they'll comply and deal with it on their own, just so you're aware of that.
Thank you.
All right.
So just kind of to segue onto that, there was, as many of you know, last Friday the Commission held an emergency session, and we exercised to the fullest extent that we have, and that apparently we are going to have, as we'll hear about in our legislative update, our ability. We passed a resolution encouraging those businesses out in Minnehaha County that are in enclosed retail to limit their patrons to 10 or less, and that's what Jason is referencing, is that there are, for the most part, most of the businesses in the outlying communities and in the county have voluntarily agreed to follow that. A lot of them have big signs posted about limiting the number of patrons, but there are a couple who are not abiding by that, and we are going to continue to investigate our options with encouraging them for the health and safety of their patrons and their employees to come into compliance. Commissioner Karski.
It's just upsetting. Encouraging them is one thing. I'm not above shaming them. If they're doing something that they know they shouldn't be, we need to call them out on it. I mean, we're beyond encouraging. It's time to name them and shame them and put their names out there. So if they continue to do it, we will call them out. I will call them out on it.
You know, I think that the public kind of takes care of that too. We do receive complaints of people that may or may not be violating, and we try and communicate with them back and forth. Kind of on another note, which it just popped into my head, there's a lot of scams out there right now with the stimulus checks coming out and all that. The IRS isn't going to call you to try and get your bank account numbers. Be aware of the scams that are out there. They're very prevalent, and just keep yourself safe that way too. The last thing anybody wants to lose is their bank account to somebody from a foreign country.
Commissioner Heiberger.
Maybe it'd be good if the Argus Leader would do a front page story on saying, this is how your money's coming, please do not take scam calls.
Yeah.
A lot of people still do read the paper.
People fall victim to it, you know, every day, and this can exacerbate it even more. People in desperation or think that they're getting a contact for the IRS or the government, and it's nefarious.
Sometimes when people are anxious or they don't think clearly, don't exercise the normal processes that they would before they click on a link or respond to a text message, and the people who are trying to take advantage of that have been active every time there's been a national emergency. They did the same thing during 9/11. They did the same thing during the last large recession, and we just need to be vigilant. There's so many good things that are going on. People are doing so many great things to help one another that I'd rather focus on that, but we do need to let constituents know that there are people out there trying to take advantage of you, and so you need to be extra careful. Okay, thank you. A couple of things before I invite Craig Dewey to come forward to give an update on the legislative session yesterday. I do want to announce that I've decided that we will, in accordance with President Trump's determination to continue the social distancing guidelines through the month of April, that the county buildings that are currently closed will remain closed through April 30th. Staff will continue to work, and we will continue to do business via the internet, via mail, via telephone, and occasionally by special appointment if needed. Here in the administration building, the Health and Human Services building is opened on a screening basis for folks to come in to get services. And the courthouse remains open, and Carol will touch on that a little bit before we finish this up. But Craig, if you want to give us an update on the legislation that was considered yesterday.
Good morning, Craig Dewey, Commission Office. Legislative Veto Day was yesterday, which signals the final day of the 2020 legislative session, and there were 12 different bills that were considered in that process on a wide range of subjects, from school dates that kids would meet in school to providing loans for economic development for businesses struggling to make payroll or rent payments or other things like that. I'd like to touch on a couple bills that would have, if they would have passed, impacted counties. And the governor had brought forward an executive order a couple of weeks ago that regarded different recommendations that her office was making to businesses. There were some unanswered questions about what authority was delegated to local governments in order to act, specifically with county government. And Senate Bill 191 had a very, very robust discussion yesterday, hours and hours and hours between the different chambers, and that bill would have granted counties the ability to declare an emergency and then take action regarding any potential steps to help mitigate transmission or spread of different diseases rather. That bill ultimately ended up failing. Commissioner Heiberger, I know you're president of SDACC, and the state association was involved. You testified yesterday. I know you and I were on the phone a couple of different times. I don't know if you have any additional comment to add regarding Senate Bill 191.
No, other than a thank you to our legislators who worked for many, many hours debating this bill. We're sad it didn't pass, but there were some from Minnehaha County that supported us. There were some that did not, and just to thank them for the hard work that they did do in making this difficult decision.
Yeah, the legislature was in session debating until around 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning when things finally checked out. There was another bill that would have delegated authority added authority rather for the Secretary of Health to declare an emergency, and that bill ultimately ended up failing. The reason why I mention that to you here is because that would have granted the Secretary of Health the ability to also enact certain business closures, which would potentially have applied to Minnehaha County as well. There were a couple of bills regarding elections that were discussed, and I know our auditor was paying very close attention to that, and we'll be able to provide you an update here. Before I turn the floor over to him, were there any other questions I could answer for you about the non-election related bills?
Just to clarify, Craig, so the takeaway from yesterday and the bills that you just alluded to that were defeated is that the legislature determined that the governor is the only person, the only elected official in the state that can ultimately declare a public health emergency and take action to close down businesses or to issue shelter-in-place orders or those kinds of things that people are wondering about and concerned about.
That is correct. And an additional point of clarification for the bills to have passed yesterday did require 2/3 majorities as far as certain rules are concerned for the legislature. So it was not just a simple majority that was required to pass bills. It was a step above that.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I'd invite our auditor to come forward and give us an update on, I know that we're all still processing everything that happened in Pierre yesterday, but if you could give a little bit of an update on your understanding of where we are, particularly with the city and school board election.
Good morning, Commission. Bob Litz from the Auditor's Office, and we've been tracking this, every before they even met. These proposals came out, and we knew that they were going to come up on veto day, which was a very, very busy day. I understand the Senate worked till 4:30 in the morning on this here. Cindy, thanks for going out there. I can't imagine.
I called.
Oh, okay. I just can't imagine the calamity and the urgency that was going on out there. But what we wound up with was actually the ability for the city and school to postpone their elections. With the target date of June 2nd being the preferred date for moving these two. However, there is a contingency clause in there that says the governor can move it up until July 28th if needed to be. The bill that the Secretary of State had crafted out there arrived mostly intact, but there was a clause in there that allowed the governor to move the date again should an emergency come up. And they took that out of there. Apparently the legislature felt that they should be involved in anything like that. So the bottom line, the shakeout for us is here in Minnehaha County and with the city school election that's going on right now, we are conducting in-person absentee voting over at the election center, just east of here. And the traffic has not been real heavy on there. Sunday, Tom Greco and I got together and built the salad bar shield that puts, a little plexiglass in between the voting public and our workers over there. There's tape marks on the floor. We hope that, there's somebody watching people to kind of space them out if the traffic does get a little heavier. We've got hand cleaning sanitizer and other cleaning things that we're using, and there are protocols in place there to do it as well as we can. And I'd be lying to you if I told you I did not have any misgivings about that interaction over there. The city, the county, the state, everybody's talking about social distancing, and then we've got this situation over there. So far, the numbers have allowed it to not be that, but we're still getting that interaction. But that's what we're dealing with. Going forward, then, the city, Tom and I have had discussions about this for the last 2 weeks, and we are going to hold our elections on the same day, which right now, the plan is June 2nd, and that is the primary date. Absentee voting for the school election will continue on through up until May 18th. Okay, voter registration will continue on through for that race until May 18th. Then also our absentee period continues on through until April 17th, which is the same time period that we're going to start our absentee voting. So we'll have 2 absentee voting periods. The city school absentee voting period is stretched way out. Ours will start at the normal time, is what I'm trying to tell you. Okay. So basically, we're going to have 2 elections side by side in the same precincts. We may need to try to find a little extra manpower to do that, if that's the deal, but you'll be checking in for one election at the polling place, and then you'll be checking in for another one, and you will receive separate ballots for them. That is what we are thinking right now. I did reach out to Drew. He wrote an opinion that we'd sent out to the state a while back, and it actually got used last night in the Senate, trying to give the State Board of Elections authority to postpone those elections if they need it, but that ultimately failed as well. So we're going to see what goes on. I'd like to have our state's attorney look the law over and see if, offer an opinion on if Tom and my plan is going to work. Obviously this just happened yesterday, and we've not had time to get together and see that. But we believe from our interpretations of the law and looking at that bill that our plan going forward is going to be the one that we can do. Any questions, please?
Any questions for the auditor? Well, thank
Madam
you.
Chair, this is Jeff.
Commissioner Barth.
Say, Bob, what is the process to absentee vote by mail? People do not have to come down to your office or to your election center to vote, and they can apply for an absentee ballot by mail for every election in the year. Is that right?
That is correct, Commissioner Barth, and I'd like to say you're more than an empty chair today, but that's what I see. And thank you for bringing that up, because we are encouraging people to vote by mail. And yes, you can get absentee ballots for both of the city school election right now, and then after April 17th, we will have the absentee ballots ready for the primary election. So yes, if you can do that, please do it. You can download the form, or you can call my office and ask me, and I will mail you one. Voter registration, or I mean, not the voter registration. I'll do the voter registration too, but the absentee ballot request. I will do that. One thing that kind of holds people up is the requirement that with that application, you send a photocopy of your driver's license. And I know that probably puts a hardship on a certain group of people that are staying indoors and don't have that copy machine. If you do have a cell phone and you can relay that to our office, we'll accept that as well. There was a rider bill put forward by Senator Neseba that would allow people to just fill out an affidavit with that absentee ballot registration, and that would be good enough. And to me, it's the same thing as if you walk into a precinct and you don't have an ID, you can fill out an affidavit. So I think the security things were still there, but some of the smaller counties weren't buying that, so we did not get that passed. But yes, please, to the public, if you are thinking about voting in this election, you could certainly play it safe and request an absentee ballot. And like I said, the absentee ballot period for the city election is going to run for a long time. And, when you get to the primary election, we've got 45 days of absentee balloting to do. So please use that as an option if you're listening to this today.
All right, well, thank you. Thanks to you and Tom Greco. I know you guys were some of the leaders in trying to bring this issue forward in Pierre and bring it to the attention of the legislature. So I'm glad. I think this was a really good solution for both our workers, poll workers, and for the voters. So hopefully we may be talking about this again as we get closer to the June date, but I think this is a good plan for right now.
We may be, and I think it's as good as we get considering the circumstances everybody was operating under. And I'd also like to thank the Secretary of State's office, because they had a marathon day this past week, actually, of doing that. And then our SADCO organization, too, they put in a lot of hours working on this thing, and it was really great to have them in our corner working. And I just wanted to recognize both of those organizations for the enormous amount of work and strain and stress and trying to keep on top of it all. It was difficult because there was a lot of amendments to the election bill, and they went in and out, and they were going to combine them, and all these different things happened. And in the end, the governor's original bill was the one that passed. So,
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. So Carol's going to come forward as she does. I just want to give you a brief update kind of on internal workings. There's an internal kind of smaller committee that is touching base every day at 8 o'clock to talk about issues related to the buildings closing and other, kind of administrative functions that we've had to work through and troubleshoot. Carol's been great about leading that. We've also had a number of department head meetings that we've held via Zoom so that the department heads can get together and we have an opportunity to communicate with them, and they have an opportunity to roundtable and communicate with each other about ways that, steps that we can take to distance our employees that are working here, some of which are in kind of close quarters normally, so that they can be 6 feet apart. Really creative, innovative solutions that a lot of department heads have come up with to either have people work remotely or move them to other places on the county campus where they're able to connect to our intranet and to fulfill their functions. And then just as we think about commission meetings, and we've tried to do social distancing here and tried to keep people as safe and healthy as we can, one other option that we've come up with is to try to limit the number of commission meetings. And so in April, we will not have commission meetings on April 7th and April 21st. We will combine our business into the other meeting dates, just as another opportunity to try to limit the amount of interaction that folks are having with one another. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Carol, and she'll just wrap it up, back cleanup for us. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you, Chairperson. Carol Muller, Commission Office. Yes, we continue to be busy with daily conference calls in the morning amongst a few of us, just touching base and trying to do some troubleshooting and looking at emerging issues that need to cover. The department heads have been great about short notice on conference calls and sharing, and continue to look at how they can do things differently all the time while still meeting customer service and the needs of our community. The one thing that I will just mention to that is we do get questions about why the courthouse is open, and I don't want to speak for the Unified Judicial System. That is a county building. With the exception of security staff, everybody in there happens to be underneath the Unified Judicial System, and that's their determination as to do. I know that they have changed things greatly in there. They're doing creative things by Zoom, and how they're doing meetings much more by email and all kinds of communication. They're limiting the number of people that are in rooms also, and their numbers have dropped dramatically. So I just wanted to address that for those people that are wondering how that works.
Thank you. I mean, we know it's confusing to the public, and it was one of the issues we talked through when we decided to close down this building, knowing that the courts were committed to staying open, feel they have a constitutional mandate to do that. And so we've had to make a few changes over here to address that. But it is confusing to the public why this building is closed and that one is not. And it is truly because they really report through a different statutory leadership structure, and those decisions are made by the Chief Judge of the Supreme Court of South Dakota for the most part, and then by the presiding local judges. So, all right, I think that is the end of our COVID update, unless anybody else has something they want to say related to COVID. I'm going to invite the auditor back up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I forgot to mention to this body that right now the city and the school have an agreement in place for the conduct of the election. I don't know if any of that's going to change, and then the city and the county are also going to have to come to some kind of terms. And so once we get that agreement, we will be back to this body to present it and look for your approval. Okay.
Thank you very much. All right, anything else from any of the commissioners? All right, hearing nothing, we'll go now to our routine business. First item would be to consider a motion to amend agenda item 6B, abatements recommended for approval, to correct a typographical error where the parcel number was listed as 80859 and should be listed as parcel 81859.
That would be my motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Hiberger,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item would be a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Hiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item is to approve the commission meeting minutes from March 24th, 2020.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second, Benega.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Benega.
Aye.
Hiberger.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye.
Barth.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item are bills to be paid in the amount of $1,957,194.34.
Motion to pay the bills.
Pay the bills.
I'll take that as a motion and a second. Any comments? There are no comments. Roll call vote, please.
Hiberger.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye.
Barth.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. There are reports there from the county coroner I'd recommend for your review for February 2020. Takes us to personnel actions. I'd consider a motion to approve routine personnel actions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Karski.
Aye.
Barth.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Hiberger. Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Now we'll have Carrie Deaver will give us a brief update on the tremendous work that she and her office have done in the last couple of weeks to deal with the many personnel issues related to the coronavirus, and particularly with the federal legislation that was passed.
Thank you. Carrie Deaver from Human Resources. As Commissioner Bender mentioned, there's been a new act passed by the federal government that's called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And this requires certain employers to provide eligible employees with expanded FMLA rights. These really fall into two specific leave types, and I just want to stress that these are in addition to any current leave types that the county provides, and that it applies to full-time and part-time staff. And it applies when staff are not able to work or telework. As you know, we have a number of employees who are working from home, and we're encouraging that. So this applies in cases where they're not able to do that. This covers all employees except for emergency responders with Minnehaha County. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about a recommended approach for emergency responders. There are two main leave benefit types under this provision. The first is called emergency paid sick leave, and it provides 2 weeks, up to 80 hours, paid sick time for all employees from the first day of employment. And the leave is to be taken if an employee is subject to federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19, or if they've been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine related to COVID-19, if they're experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and seeking a medical diagnosis, or if they're caring for an individual subject to an order described as the first and second one that I'd listed. Fifth, if they're caring for a child whose school or place of care is closed for reasons related to COVID-19. Or sixth, if they're experiencing any other substantially similar condition. So for that emergency paid sick leave, all those hours the county is recommending be paid at regular rate. So basically 80 hours for our full-time staff and a prorated amount for part-time staff to be paid at regular rate if they're dealing with one of these COVID-19 related issues. The second type of leave type is an expanded Family Medical and Leave Act type of leave, and we're referring to that as public health emergency leave. And this provides for up to 10 additional weeks of time off for an employee who is unable to work or telework due to a bona fide need for leave to care for a child. Unlike emergency paid sick leave, this is paid only at 2/3 of the rate of pay, and it has a maximum benefit of $200 per day. I think I had mentioned that this applies to almost all employees. That includes full-time and part-time, but for the part-time, the benefits are prorated based on the hours that they would normally work over that period of time. We're asking that if any employee has this type of leave need, that they contact Human Resources. There is a request form that we'll have them complete, and they do need to provide documentation to substantiate the need for leave. Any questions on that before I talk a little bit about who this does not apply to and what we would like to do for them?
Commissioner Heiberger.
The funding for this.
This is employer paid. If you're a private employer, there is a tax credit that I understand that they're eligible for, but to my knowledge, that will not apply to local government employers. Very good question, so.
Yeah.
Additional leave above and beyond what we pay right now. Okay. This doesn't apply to emergency responders, and I think you can understand why. These are our frontline people who are coming to work under very unusual circumstances. And for the county, we're considering emergency responders to be any full-time staff in the sheriff's office, almost all full-time staff in the juvenile detention center, and then some select individuals in facilities who have to come to work in order to make sure that our facilities are working like the jail. In recognition that these people also have the potential to become ill or have to care for someone that they love and they need to be home with, we are proposing that we also provide them the 80 hours of leave, just like under Families First for emergency paid sick leave. So same provisions, and I should stress that this is a leave type that becomes available on April 1st and ends on December 31st, 2020. In addition to that, because they're not eligible for the child care leave, and even though there are options for them in the community for that, recognizing that that benefit isn't there for them, and in addition, they're working under unusual circumstances, we're requesting support for giving them 40 hours of time off next year. So this is time that would be given to them effective January 1st, 2021, to be used in that year. No payout, use it, use the benefit if you can. If you don't have the time to do it, then they would lose it. But we would give them, like I said, we're recommending a year of time to go ahead and use that benefit. 40 hours for anybody who's employed as of April 1st and is going through this whole year, and 30 hours for anybody who'd be hired on June 1st. So that's our recommended approach for handling our emergency responders. I also want to stress that, again, this is leave benefits that are above and beyond any type of leave benefit that we're providing. The county isn't providing any administrative leave right now. If people are not at work, it's either because they're working off-site or because they're taking another one of their paid time off benefits. Extended sick leave is still there for employees too, and we're really encouraging, if you're sick, go home. And you might remember we used to have that provision where people had to take 24 hours of PTO before getting to sick leave because that was intended for serious health conditions only. We've converted that and want staff to take it if they're ill right away. So those benefits are there. We also have paid time off benefits there. And you probably remember a few weeks ago that we put in a provision to provide leave advancement for anybody who'd exhausted their own leave accruals. We're recommending that stay in place as well. Does anyone have questions about our proposed approach for complying with Families First?
Does anybody, Commissioner Barth or Benega, do either of you have questions?
I do not.
All right.
I don't either.
Thank you. Well, I really want to commend Carrie and her staff. They have really worked very, very, very hard the last couple of weeks. And I'd like to, working with the sheriff's office and other department heads to try to come up with a solution that tried to hit the sweet spot between the need for emergency responders, their need to be here to, possibly expose themselves on a daily basis to people who might be infected, but to, kind of thread the needle between what the federal law requires and allows. This is the option that came up through a number of conversations with people and considering a lot of different options. And we're not taking action on this today because the commission had delegated authority to me to make decisions about leave during this emergency period. But I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of it and we had opportunities to have input. So, all right. Well, thank you very much.
you.
Appreciate it. All right. So that takes us to item 6, which are abatements recommended for approval. Chris Lola, good morning.
Good morning, Commission. Chris Lilly, Equalization Office. Yeah, before you today is 2 abatements. First one is parcel number 90554. We're recommending for 2019 property tax abatement of $397.55. This is a mobile home that had been moved out of the county in early 2019, and I recommend approval.
Any questions?
Move approval.
Second?
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Hiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously.
The next abatement is for an elderly freeze with the corrected parcel number of 81859. This abatement request came through the treasurer's office, so we're recommending an abatement in the amount of $550.31, and I recommend it as well.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion,
Second, Benega.
motion and a second. Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Benega,
Aye.
Hiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
And then
Thank
I'd just
you.
like to touch on our office here. With county boards coming up, we did get directives from, which I shared with the commission office, from Department of Revenue, that there is no anticipation of postponing or canceling county boards. They are to go on as scheduled. I want to remind the public that if they wish to appeal to the county board, written notice needs to be received to the equalization office by April 7th. Postmarked is sufficient and considered timely. We've pushed out our scheduling. We're anticipating our first day of county boards to begin on April 29th. Right now, our volume doesn't look too bad. I think we've got 20 on the books, which isn't too heavy right now. Some of those will be resolved probably prior to that when working with the public. So we're going to try and facilitate, again, as I mentioned in department head call yesterday. Tomorrow I have a conference call with Monty to try and figure out Zoom. I think it would be very beneficial for the commissioners if they couldn't be present, for sure, to do that conference call-in as we're doing today. With the taxpayers, I'm not sure how that would work with all the technicalities of the passwords and logins and all of that to get them in there. But we did utilize the calling out to some appellants at the local boards, and it did seem to work pretty well. So I'm not sure how much or the extensive use will be made, but we'll be very flexible, whether it be people in-house or calling in or us calling out. We'll get some details figured out.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item are notices and requests. There are none. Item 8, planning and zoning notices. There are none. That takes us to item 9, which is a petition for compromise of lien. Melinda, good morning.
Good morning, Melinda Storley, Commission Assistant. Before you is a request for compromise of lien DPNO 46967 in the amount of $4,571.24. The petitioner would like to refinance her home due to financial hardship. However, the bank will not move forward as long as the lien from her former spouse is attached to her property. When they divorced on December 27, 2019, the judge awarded the petitioner possession of the home and ruled that the order would also serve as a quitclaim to facilitate transfer of the lienie's interest in the property to the petitioner. A quitclaim deed already existed prior to the divorce. It was recorded with the Register of Deeds on February 2010. The document does show that the lienie has transferred his interest in the property to the petitioner. I don't know why that occurred in 2010. I was not given a reason. Our office has confirmed that the debt on the lien was incurred by the lienie for poor relief and legal representation recorded from January 2002 to April 2009. I'd like to just clarify, I made a comment on the lien summary where I indicated that two individuals had incurred a lien between 2002 and 2003. That second individual is the lienie's previous spouse or partner. Not clear on that one either, but it's somebody that he was living with at the time. So those poor reliefs have already been recorded in both of their names, half and half. So what we're looking at here for this petition is lien fees from 2004 to 2019. If we considered the period where they were married, from 2005 to 2019, the total amount for those lien fees that were incurred is $3,904.40. If you divide that by 50%, it would be $1,952.20. Again, that's because these were recorded during the period that they were married. The action requested from the petitioner is to release the lien only insofar as the real property for address 2204 South Crestwood Road, legally described as Lot 2 in Block 4 of Riverdale addition to the city of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County, South Dakota, according to the recorded plat thereof. The petitioner does believe that the lien is not her responsibility, and the lien will remain in full against the lienee in the amount of $4,571.24.
These are always so much more complicated than you would ever imagine. So, questions for Melinda? Commissioner Karski.
Go ahead.
She hasn't offered to pay anything on the lien, right?
No.
Okay.
Commissioner Heiberger.
So the quitclaim deed happened in 2010, and the liens that they're responsible for are from, what was the time period?
2005 to 2019.
Any other questions for Melinda? The applicant is not
I
here.
don't.
All right. Anybody have a motion? Commissioner Karski.
I guess I have some comments, if I may.
Fine.
Marriage is for better or for worse, and she got the short end of the stick on this one, I have to agree, but he also quitclaimed the house over to her. She has full interest in the house. I'm having a real difficult time with, if she's not even gonna pay at least half with forgiving this lien against the property. She got the full value of the house. They were married. He lived there, I'm assuming, for at least 15 years. This one just doesn't feel good to me to forgive at this point. We're probably missing a lot of the story that, granted, but unless somebody can convince me otherwise, I would not be in favor of removing this lien.
Commissioner Heiberger.
Just, I'm with you, it's just a mess, but I was thinking more that she would the property part of it would be responsible from 2005 and back. Or 2000, the quitclaim deed was in 10?
2010.
Well, I would say from 2010 and back, she would be responsible for half, only because the house wasn't a part of it. But I would look for anybody else's suggestions, because this is a mess.
Commissioner Barth or Benega?
This is Commissioner Benninga. I would agree with Commissioner Karski's response. I believe she has some responsibility since she acquired the value of the home and hasn't done any payment on that at all.
Well, it sounds like
Madam Chair, this is Jeff.
Commissioner Barth.
It seems to me that maybe we should send it back and ask her to make us an offer for a partial payment.
Is that a motion?
I'm waiting to hear more debate.
Is there any other debate? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I would make a motion to send it back to the applicant to make us an offer.
I would second that with a comment.
We have a motion and a second.
There's there's no financial records in here at all. I don't know where she is or what she's doing, and so I think there's some of it missing from this application too. We don't know what the situation is here, and so I think that's a good idea.
Would you like her to submit financial records? Okay.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to essentially deny it and offer the opportunity to make a new application with an offer and further financial information. Any further comments, questions? Not, roll call vote, please.
Hiberger. Aye. Karski.
Aye.
Barth.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Commissioners Barth and Benega, I want you both to know that they conveniently placed the telephone kind of right between where you both normally sit. So I get to look the same direction at the black phone to see if you're going to say anything. So we appreciate you guys attending remotely. This is helping us to practice for what might be coming in equalization and possibly with future commission meetings. So I appreciate the opportunity to try this out here. All right, so that takes us to public comment. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak at this time? Seeing nobody, we'll go to regular business. First item is item 10. It's a brief presentation on Minnehaha Planning, Zoning, and Parks. Scott Anderson, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Scott Anderson, Planning Director, and I've prepared a brief presentation for you to sort of, and the public, to give you an overview of some general operations of the planning department and building department, and also answer any questions you may have. So just for the public's information, the planning department is responsible for issuing all the building permits and working with general development in the county, conditional use permits, rezoning, platting for subdivisions. We also issue building permits. It's a requirement that everyone in the county obtain a building permit for construction work. And I just would remind the public that they should always, if they're in doubt, call, and we can guide them through whether they, what's required for a building permit and how to obtain that. So with that in mind, I will jump into what the planning department has done, and we'll go from there. So just an idea of what we've already completed. We also do the code enforcement, and we've done conditional use permit inspections. The planning department is also, and building services or works with doing all the building inspections. So typically for most building inspections, there are a number of sequential building inspections that are required. We typically start off with a project. If it's let's just say it's a new home, there's a septic inspection. They come in and they obtain a on-site wastewater disposal permit, which is typically a septic system or a holding tank. There's an inspection for that. Then they come in and get the building permit for the structure. And that starts out with a footings inspection. So there's an inspection specifically for the footings. Then there's an inspection for the framing. We work with the state of South Dakota to conduct or to do the plumbing and the electrical inspections. So the property owner applicant works directly with the state to obtain those inspections. Then we typically work into a framing inspection, and those framing inspections may be one or two or more inspections as needed. And then finally, then the last inspection is the final inspection, in which we determine that the property is certified as habitable and is prepared a final occupancy permit. So we do all the inspection permits. This last year, if you recall, we did a major sign ordinance revision. That was a long process that we worked with the Planning Commission and the city for about 6 months. We had several public hearings, and then we brought that in front of the commission, and we did the adoption of some major sign code revision that was needed in order to bring us into compliance with recent court cases from the U.S. Supreme Court. You may also recall, and for the public, we have recently, within the last couple months adopted new building codes, and that might have been actually the end of last year, but we have adopted the latest vision or version of the International Building Code and the Residential Code. And then a couple weeks ago, we revisited our fee schedule, building permit fee schedule, to make it similar to how the city of Sioux Falls charges for building permits. And it had been, I believe, 3-4 years since the last adoption of building code revisions. So that's sort of some things that we've already completed. And the next slide is, thank you. So some of the things that we're currently working on and that we continue to work on, of course, code enforcement, which works with zoning violations. That's always an ongoing process, and you sometimes get to see the tail end of that when we don't have compliance or we feel the need to bring something to the county commission to declare it a public nuisance, which gives us the authority to clean up a site. You will see that. However, we have many cases, and I've given you the statistics. It averages between, let's just say, 75 and 100 cases of zoning violations or nuisance violations that we deal with on an annual basis, and that's a lot of outreach to the public that requires constant monitoring and working with the public. So while 75 cases or 100 cases doesn't maybe sound like a lot, for 2 or 3 people, it is a lot of work to constantly be reaching out, going out, inspecting them, explaining to the public or to that property owner what is all required to bring that into compliance or to correct the situation. So we continue to do building and septic inspections, and I've given you those numbers as well as at the year-end report. That can be anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000 inspections. And the reason that number is rather high is because of all the inspections that are required for each project. We also then prepare staff reports for the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment for any variances that come in, and Commissioner Barth sits on that Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment as your liaison. And then finally, we continue to work with the public with general inquiries and development requests and inquiries into how to develop property and how that might work. We have actively been promoting our Facebook page on our Planning and Zoning Facebook page, and I think that is going to become more vital as we sort of navigate through these troubled times. It gives the public another option to sort of follow and to be connected with planning and zoning. And then finally, as we're all aware, we are in the process of the 2020 census right now, and my office has been working closely with the Census Bureau. We work with them closely on a regular basis because we are obligated to provide them new housing starts to the federal government, and for every new residence that is constructed out there, we need, out in the county, we provide the Census Bureau with that new address because we want to make sure that that new address is added into their database so they can, over the next 10 years, will have a very accurate database to mail out their census surveys to. This gives you an idea, and those numbers are way too small for me to read, but it gives you an idea of the number of code enforcement's applications. If I really squint, let's see here. So there's nuisance complaints, there's zoning complaints, there's solid waste, there's CUP reviews, and those figures all give you the idea of how we have functioned in regard to code enforcement. It really, it's a last resort, and it's the last step, well, it's near the last step, is to bring an item before you for declaring it a county nuisance or a public nuisance. And we continue to work on those. And then finally, the next item is sort of a review of the number of submittals that we have worked on in the past year. And we do think, the planning department works with like rezonings, variances, conditional use permits, preliminary plans, thanks. And temporary uses. So those are all some of the items that we deal with, and those numbers are there for your review. And then I think what we plan to do next, and maybe there's gonna be, I do have some information to provide. As you know, we work jointly with the city of Sioux Falls to do the flyover with pictometry for aerial photography. That is up in the air right now, no pun intended, but there's been some questions on if that is going to occur. We have been contacted by the vendor, who we do have a signed contract with. They are hesitant to send their employees due to travel. They are located in Washington State, and they have their state is approaching the COVID-19 outbreak in a different manner than we are, or they have a lot more cases. So they asked us if it would be possible to maybe do this in the fall, and that's not our preference, because the problem with how we use that information is it is leaf off. So we get a better image if there are no leaves on that property. So we're actively working with Pictometry, the vendor, to determine what our next steps are going to be. Because if they are not going to be able to meet that contract, we will have to probably work with the state's attorney and bring something back to you and work with the city of Sioux Falls, because my preference would be that we just postpone it till next April, because it's more important to have that information, if we're paying for that product, to have that with no leaf on. So we're still sort of navigating the waters on how this is going to all work out for us. So one of the other items I've been working on is a mutual building inspection program with Lincoln County. And I have been working with Toby Brown, the planning director of Lincoln County, and how we can potentially structure this. Lincoln County also has sort of a mutual aid agreement with the city of Harrisburg to do their building inspection. And I see this only being utilized in the situation where our building inspector may be gone on sick leave for an extended period, or if the building inspector is gone, let's say takes a 2-week vacation. Because in the short term, we do require like a 24-hour notice for building inspection. And while I'm not a certified building inspector, I have been going out and doing septic inspections, because I'm pretty familiar with how septic systems work, and I can do those on a short term if he's gone a day or two. I also can do footing inspections, but I'm not qualified to do framing inspections or final inspections. So if we do have those come in, we've been working around that at this point to try and accommodate the construction, the contractor or the property owner to do those inspections. However, my concern, I want to look ahead, I want to be prepared that if something were to happen where we have the building inspector position should become vacant, or if there's an illness or an extended more than a week of vacation, then I want to be able to look at how we could maybe partner with Lincoln County. So we're in the initial stages of that right now. And then finally, what we're also working on is we're continuing our social media engagement and how we reach out to the public and trying to involve them in other ways besides the paper, and we work with the paper copies we send out to people. So those are some of the items that we have been working on, and I think that's the last. So, and then we have been continuing, I guess I have failed to indicate that or I overlooked indicating that one of the other items, one of the major items that we've also been working on over the past several months, almost for a year now, is we have been working closely with the city of Hartford. And I know that many of you or all of you have attended public hearings with Hartford on where we are going with joint zoning or potential joint zoning. So that continues to be an area that we work with the city of Hartford. And then we always work with many of our other partners, Brandon, Hartford, Garrettson, Del Rapids. We have a joint zoning district with a joint extraterritorial zoning control with Del Rapids, and we work closely with them. So I would be glad to answer any questions you might have and go from there.
Questions for Scott? Commissioner Karski.
Two, does the city feel the same way on pictometry as you do? Are they on
Yes.
board? Okay, so they're,
Yeah. It is just, it's the best practice. We'll just say it's best practice to have those images with leaf off. They, in the business say leaf off, and that means that the trees have not sprouted yet, and I mean, that will be in the next month, so.
okay. And then the other one, as you indicated, you work with all the communities across the county. Anything going on that we should be aware of, kind of like the Hartford issue last year?
Really, other than, and that's an ongoing issue, we continue to work with the city of Hartford on their interest in joint zoning control. But with the municipalities, that seems to be the primary area that we've been working on. And we also work closely, as you know, with towns and townships. So our zoning net really covers a broad area, because we work with, and actually we end up working with other states and the counties. When we have projects that are close to the county or state boundaries, we end up working closely with Lyon County or Rock County or Pipestone County. So we do work with other counties as well.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, this is Jeff.
Commissioner Barth.
So, being liaison to Scott, I'm certainly in contact with him on many things. But we have a 2-month Planning and Zoning Commission meeting coming up, which includes a joint deal with the city of Sioux Falls. And I know Scott has concerns about gathering a large number of people, citizens and commissioners, planning commissioners. And he's been working on finding alternatives. I wonder, Scott, if you might report on some of your ideas there.
Well, I've met with the state's attorney yesterday on how we could potentially move forward and meet all of the state requirements or state laws for due process for people to be involved with a meeting. We have set up a Zoom account. David and Kevin in my office have been working on that, and we are going to incorporate with the hearing notices that we send out for the next meeting, which is April 27th. We are going to be on the hearing notice indicating if you want to participate electronically, this is how you're going to do it. And we'll have a moderator, we'll have I guess, I'm not sure what the term is, but we'll have a facilitator, which will probably be someone in my office, either David Heinhold or Kevin Hookman. We will be having a laptop, and then we will be able to work with the public as they come in. I guess there's a raise your hand symbol or something, and we can accommodate people's questions. Now, and Jeff is aware of this, and I will let you know that we do have a gravel pit on the next agenda, and as you know, those can be they can bring in a lot of participation into a meeting. So I am sort of concerned on how we are going to, if people do decide they would rather just come down here and make themselves known, we are somehow going to have groups of people stacked down the hallway, and we are changing a few things. We're not going, when we work with Zoom, we will not be using a consent calendar. because I think it's important that we have each item heard. So if someone is interested, they can signal that they want this item discussed. And I will stagger people, and I sort of see myself as a little bit of I'll play the role of town crier, and I will go down the hallway and make sure that that I will announce that we're going to start working on this particular item, and we'll shuttle people in and out of here as necessary. And the city of Sioux Falls, we do have a joint meeting, and so when we have 7 county planning commissioners and 5 to 7 city commissioners, it's going to be, my concern is how we're going to fill this room up with commissioners. So by doing the Zoom or teleconferencing, we maybe will have fewer commissioners that will actually come in here and will participate electronically. My other idea was just we hold a meeting out by the flagpole and just have and that way we just have everyone social distance, but you then run into rain and making sure that people can hear, but I thought maybe it's a good idea. So I talked to Carol about that. We could, go real old school and just like a sheriff's sale, we just gather out by the flagpole at the front of the building. And I don't know, I sort of like that idea, but I think it might be hard to manage, so we'll try and manage this way. But if anyone has any good ideas of how to hold a better meeting and still meet all the state law requirements for due process, I'm willing to try anything.
That's the issue that a lot of us are struggling with right now. I know the state's attorney has been looking at that both for commission meetings, for equalization hearings, and for your hearings as well. And we're trying. Monty Wantenbach, our IT person, has been very helpful in helping us think through technological options. And I think we're all going to have learned a lot of things about other ways business can be done when this whole coronavirus lets up a little bit. But I really appreciate your innovative thinking about that, and I think that I'm glad that we have another week or two to kind of work through details. Commissioner Heiberger, did you have something? Oh, okay. Anyone else have any questions for Scott?
I don't.
Okay.
Well,
All
thank
right.
you.
Well, thank you very much. That was a really good presentation.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. All right. So now we have a couple of items for highway. First one is item 11, which would be to authorize the chair to sign an agreement with Alteg Engineers for professional services to conduct engineering design for highway project MC 20-08 bridge guardrail rehab. DJ, thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. DJ Boothie, Highway Superintendent. We completed our bridge inspections last year and identified 4 structures that need improvements to their either approach rail, their existing guardrail, or the paint, the coating on the existing guardrail. And it's a combination of those 3 improvements on the 4 different structures. And the cost estimate for construction, we're thinking, is going to be about $350,000. The cost for designing these improvements is $31,653. And looking for your approval on that agreement for Alteg Engineers.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions? If not, roll call vote, please.
Karski,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Heiberger,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Takes us to item 12, which is to authorize the chair to sign a utility relocation agreement with Minnehaha Community Water Corporation for project MC 17-01 County Highway 146 reconstruction.
Commissioners, later this year, we'll start construction on the County Highway 146 project. And there's rural water along this route. There's approximately 2 miles of it that needs to be relocated or improved because of the project. That includes 13 services as well. And so they've got just under $400,000 they're estimating of improvements that they're going to make. We've looked at the cost estimate and established a number of $162,681 of those improvements are due to this project. The remaining is more upgrade type stuff that they're doing. And so asking for your approval of this agreement to reimburse the agency for $162,681.
Motion to approve.
It's a motion.
Second?
Second, comments,
Second.
questions? Anybody have any questions for DJ? All right, roll call vote, please.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Hiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, the next item.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Madam Chair, Jeff here. Say, obviously I'm at home vacuuming and emptying the dishwasher, but I did happen to see that President Trump today called on Congress to spend $2 trillion on roads and bridges, and since they can borrow the money at zero. So I'm just encouraging our highway department to keep an eye on that.
All right, thank you. DJ's shaking his head, so he's definitely going to keep an eye on it. We appreciate that. All right, so the next item, I believe Judy Weirkamp is calling in. It's the item 13 is a item to authorize the chair to sign a condemnation dispute resolution to acquire a right-of-way and authorize the state's attorney to sign the stipulation for judgment. Is Judy on the phone?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. That's
Yes.
like
Good morning,
magic. Hi,
Commissioners.
Judy.
Yes, and I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to attend telephonically. So this is Judy Weirkamp, Minnehaha County Deputy State's Attorney. And in conjunction with Highway 146 that Mr. Boothie was just visiting about, the county sought to purchase various rights-of-way, temporary and permanent easements and drainage easements from certain landowners along Highway 146. And a dispute arose with certain landowners over the value of those rights-of-ways and easements on 8 parcels. And that dispute has been resolved pending the Commission's approval. So at this time, I'm requesting authorization for the chair to sign the settlement agreement to pay the $51,900 to resolve the dispute. And if the settlement is approved, then I would respectfully request authority for the state's attorney to sign the stipulation for final judgment.
Any questions for Judy?
Motion to
I would
approve.
make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Benega,
Aye.
Hiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Judy, thank you so much for your hard work on that. That was a good result, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to item 14, which is to authorize the chair to sign an extension to the agreement with NEI Commercial Real Estate for brokerage services to sell the 908 Northwest building. I think Carol's looking for Craig.
Craig may
I
have
think
gotten-
Craig might be watching the governor's press conference.
Okay, and you
so.
might have gotten caught up on a phone call. Yes, before you today, we have 908 West Avenue for sale. And that building has been listed with NAI, and all this does is extend this for another year for listing for it. Are there any questions you may have?
Questions, comments? Not, I'd entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, it's Jeff.
Yes, Commissioner Barth.
Are we satisfied with the effort that they're putting in? That would be my question.
NAI has been very good about staying in touch with us and has continued to show that quite often. It's a large building, a unique building, and one we knew would not sell quickly.
Any other questions?
Motion to
I
approve.
would make a motion to approve the commercial real estate agreement with NAI.
Commissioner Benega, second by Commissioner Heiberger. Any other comments, questions? Roll call vote, please.
Hiberger,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item is to authorize the chair to sign an agreement for professional legal services for drug and alcohol involuntary commitments. Carol.
Commissioners, Carol Muller, Commission Office. Before you today is a request to authorize the chairperson to sign a contract for professional legal services for drug and alcohol involuntary commitments. About 3 years ago, this body directed, along with the presiding judge at that particular time, we spent quite a bit of time looking at numbers, looking at data, and what drives a lot of our costs and what opportunities we would have to make things more efficient and control some costs with the court system. And the one is we went into doing IVC contracts. These are IVCs for drug and alcohol. It's confusing because IVCs can refer to both mental health and drug and alcohol. These are specifically for drug and alcohol, and they would represent the petitioner. It's usually family and friends who are filing with the courts to have an involuntary commitment placed on somebody. So this contract, instead of contracting with 4 attorneys, we would now contract with 1 attorney, and the budgeted amounts would not be affected by doing so. And the contract would be with Jennifer English of English Law Offices. Jennifer's been doing this since we first started doing it and enjoys this work.
Any questions?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second, Benega.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Karski.
Aye.
Barth.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Hiberger.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, that takes us to liaison reports. Are there any liaison reports? I think most of us have been consumed with COVID-19 issues. Any new business?
Madam Chair, it's Jeff here.
Commissioner Barth.
I just would comment that I've been getting contact from citizens about, I see kids playing on the playground. Can they do that? Why are people being allowed in the courthouse? And if a family of 4 goes to a restaurant, does that count as 1 individual, or is that 4 individuals? These kinds of questions apparently are still a mystery to the citizens out there, and we need to continue to try to communicate.
Okay, thank you. Any old business? I would just note under old business, while I was clear that the commission meeting was going to be canceled for next week and for the 21st, there's also a building committee meeting that shows up on our calendar. There will also not be a building committee meeting next week. So no building committee and no regular commission meeting next week. Any other old business? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Karski.
Aye.
Barth.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Hiberger.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for coming this morning in person and telephonically. Goodbye, Commissioners Barth and Benega.
That sounds great.
All right.